All right, so welcome to today's podcast. My name is Scott Engler. I'm a published author and thought leader on contemporary job search strategies and really optimizing LinkedIn to land that next role. And today I have the honor of having Adrienne Tom to interview. And Adrienne, you can't see her, but she is here. She is an award-winning executive resume writer, interview coach, and job search strategist with Career Impressions. And she partners with executives and top professionals from all over the world, helping them unearth their unique value to set them apart from the competition during a career transition. And her award-winning resumes can be seen in publications like Resume for Dummies, and she's been featured in major media outlets like Forbes and NBC News. So this is a great treat to have her today and to have her insight and tips for job seekers, as she's been doing this for well over a decade. And she's been had her own company now for a decade helping job seekers, but she was working for a university beforehand. So really honored to have her. And you could say hi, Adrienne, so we make sure we could hear you.
Hi, Scott. Thank you so much for having me today.
You're very welcome. And so we'll get started. So the first question that I really wanted to ask you is based on job interviewing. And the focus of today's interviewing is really for today's interview with you is really about people that we've worked with over the years, or you've worked with, I should say, that are good-hearted people and are really qualified and make great candidates, but they might not be as great at some of the steps of the process to get that job. So one of the areas I found that I most overestimated my skills at, and so many job seekers overestimate their skills at, is the actual interview. And one of the main reasons I've found that this is such an overrated or overestimated account is because it's really an area they never get any subjective or like tangible feedback from hiring parties, right? It's usually very general. We went with someone that's the best fit. And so, has this been your experience as well in your clients over the years? And what do you think are some ways that qualified candidates can prepare for an interview to really put their best foot forward and stand out from the competition, taking this information into account?
Right. Excellent question. I definitely agree. Over the years, I do feel that, I've partnered with a lot of really good professionals that have, overestimated their skills in the interview process. And most people, I think they come to me and they say, oh, if I just get a good resume to get me noticed, I'll take care of the rest. I'm a great communicator. Yet often, when we sit down together and we start talking, and I start pressing these individuals to, sell me their value, they can't. And so I think a lot of it stems from just not having a good understanding of personal value and having confidence in that, and then having some good stories prepared that backs up those skills and qualifications. And typically, I say to put your best foot forward in an interview, you maybe want to focus on the 4 P's, and those would be prepare, practice, be professional, and participate. And these all sound really straightforward. A lot of people would say, oh yeah, I'm definitely doing that. But the truth is, often they're not. And, if they just put a little bit more time and attention into those really 4 basic things, they would see some way better results in the process itself. So, if you're going to break it down, preparing is researching the company, it's evaluating the job posting and having a good understanding of what employers are looking for. It's getting those good stories ready to share, right? And you want to ensure any stories you're going to share are aligned with the role requirements, so you're not deviating from your personal value message during the interview process. Practice. People say, oh, I don't need to practice, I can just go in cold. But the truth is, going in cold, you might be drawing or seeing things that are not directly related to the position, and that's going to water down your value message during the process. So, I usually say you want to practice answers so that they flow naturally. You're not caught stumbling. You're not caught frozen, right? It's easy to draw a blank in a moment under pressure, and all those things are going to really hurt your chances. And being professional, I mean, it's amazing how many people make small mistakes in the interview process that they may be, right, not aware of. I'd say things like being late, chewing gum, checking your phone, dressing inappropriate, right? You know, all of these are not appreciated by the employer, but they can be easily avoided. And so just a little bit more practice and preparation in that area can help you be a lot more professional in the moment. And then lastly, participate. And, you know, it might seem obvious again, but a lot of job seekers show up and spend too much time locked inside their head. And this can come down to anxiety, you know, or not practicing or preparing. But, you know, if you're locked inside your head, you're not participating in the conversation. You're coming across a little bit unengaged, removed, unenthusiastic. And again, these things can really hurt your chances of, you know, creating rapport with the interviewer who really wants to get to know you and like you at the end of the day. So you want to be part of the conversation in a really positive manner.
Those are really great. I love the 4 P's, the prepare. So I have prepare, practice, professional, and then participate, right?
That.
Did I get those right, Adrienne?
You did, for sure. Those are perfect. Yep.
And I found the same thing usually with my clients. And, you know, for me, I learned for myself in interviewing was like to have some stories ready to go, you know, because, and ones that got me passionate and excited, obviously, right? So to have some stories that ideally demonstrate my value to the organization, but also spark my own passion about what my values are and, you know, why I want to have this job, right?
Right, because that comes down to that enthusiastic part of it where employers want to feel like you want this role. I think a lot of people go in and they forget to demonstrate that enthusiasm for the position and really, like you said, you know, spark that fire and get things ignited so that you can have a really passionate conversation and get the employers to buy into what you're selling.
And I've actually, so I've, you know, had some employees work for me now in my business, and honestly, I've heard it from other hiring managers, and I understood what they're saying, but I didn't experience it until I started interviewing a lot of people. And most people didn't express enthusiasm for like what I did in my job. And like, to me, that's one of the most important things, because if you just want a job, I don't want you working for me.
Right.
You know, if you're just looking for a job, it's like, I want someone working for me that's aligned in the passion of, you know, what my mission is of my company and what I'm about. And so I think my recommendation is always quality over quantity. Find organizations you really do want to work for, because otherwise, what's the point? You're just going to be looking for a job again pretty soon because you're, you know, not passionate, and it's going to come across in the interview.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Yeah. So, and then the other thing for people like me that could get a little perfectionistic with the preparing and the stories, I feel like what I've found is that there is a sense of over preparing I've found in myself and clients. And so something that helped me stay out of my head, because ironically, sometimes if I'd over prepare, I'd be too in my head and less present. And what I found is that a lot of hiring managers, in fact, everyone I've ever interviewed, said that they don't mind at all if you ask for some time to think about their question, because skilled ones are going to ask you tough questions. And what helped me out was that some even recommended that if you didn't get to answer a question or didn't feel like you really answered it well, that they actually really admire people that email them later and say, hey, I had more time to think about this. And here's what my thoughts were. I just, you know, for whatever reason was kind of stuck from that question. And I was surprised that people, you know, across the board, they're like, oh, I love it when people take the time to do that, because, you know, it shows that they're human beings and that they really thought about it and are taking it seriously. So that helped me. The reason I'm sharing that is because that helped me stay out of my head when I prepared, knowing that even if I, quote unquote messed up, that I'd still have an opportunity to follow up later.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
That's a great strategy as well that I work with.
Have you found this?
Showing initiative, you can do it on some.
Adrienne, you're cutting out right now, unfortunately.
I tell people to do, in the moment, you're right, we are all just. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I could hear you.
How is it? Is it better now, Scott?
Oh, now, okay, you're slowly coming in again.
Okay, so how is it now?
It's much better. I could hear every word that came out.
Okay, perfect.
Everything you said after, in response to me, I couldn't hear.
Okay, so I'll just I'll just reiterate here just so we catch that. Basically, I was just saying, I agree with you. That's a great strategy, is to give people the options to really just go with the flow in the moment and not always try to be a perfectionist. Employers don't want perfectionists. They want real people to work for them. So like you said, sometimes it's different for different people. They have to approach it with a different strategy. That could be asking for more time to consider the question in the moment. That could be circling back to the question near the end of the interview, or following up, like you said, after the interview. I think you're right. Employers appreciate that. They want real people, and they want people who are invested in the job and the right fit for the job. So at the end of the day, some of those things can be overlooked. And again, there's a lot of anxiety tied to interviewing. And, we all don't necessarily perform at our best in an interview because of the pressure.
Right.
So sometimes employers, they understand that, they get that. And, there's different things that job seekers can do to help work with that. And one of those things is to say, I need a moment. Is that okay? Can I consider this? I think that's absolutely acceptable.
Yeah, and I found in more practice, the more that I did that in interviews, I could just let go of that question, and the answer would either come to me later or it wouldn't.
That's right.
The more I could do that, the more I could just automatically stay present for the next question. So again, for me, it was just a lot of practice, practicing a lot, because I realized once I started interviewing a lot of hiring managers, because I've always been good at sales and a people person. I thought I was good at interviewing. Turned out I wasn't at all. It's a unique skill set, and it's not like riding a bike.
It's true.
Yeah.
I always say to people, how often do you interview in your lifetime? It's maybe only a handful of times. It's really difficult to master a skill that you're not applying on a regular basis. So we have to, we do have to put that energy and effort towards it every time it comes up.
And I love what you said earlier about, different people need different strategies. And again, that's why I, encourage people to, even if it's not with me or with you, work with a professional that understands what hiring managers are looking for, because A, you don't necessarily understand what they're looking for, and B, you might need a different strategy than somebody else based on your personality. And so how could you collaborate with a professional that understands working with different, professionals and personalities to help you put that best foot forward? It's like, how important is this interview to you? So again, I really encourage people to work with a professional in this area, because it's so important. And it's like, you're that close to getting the job. And it's like, how important is this to you? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
do you want to skip now? Do you want to run the risk of skimping now and just saving, not spending money? It's like, look, if you could, spend a little bit to make a heck of a lot, I should say, more money from that job, why not?
Absolutely. I 100% agree. Like I said, a lot of clients come to me and they say, I just want a resume. I just want a LinkedIn profile. And you know what? To get a job, you have to invest on all levels equally, because like you said, they're all just as important. In the interview process, even more so, because like you said, you're right at the finish line almost. So you don't want to blow your chances right near the end.
And what I've found with my clients is actually, with few, maybe any exceptions at this point, once we start, especially the people that are a little bit more quote unquote modest, we always uncover in working together that they are actually underselling or valuing themselves. And so part of the job interviewing process is working on salary negotiating. And there's plenty of ways. I've negotiated salaries in the past once I started writing, books and articles on this, that if you're the right person, they'll work with you. And and there's a lot of flexible options that people could do. And so, I'm always quick to try to point out to people, well, even if you spent X amount of money, if we could help you get, 5, 10, 15, even $20,000 more from the salary you were thinking you were going to get, wouldn't that be well worth it? It's like, so just to kind of get in the mindset that, instead of that scarcity mindset, it's more of an abundant mindset.
Right. Instead of a cost, it's an investment, right? It's an investment in your career, in your future, and like you said, your future earning power as well.
And as you so eloquently said, maybe it was last month, the cost of not having another job or a better job. If you're underemployed or unemployed, it's like, well, how much money are you losing every month by being underemployed? I talked to some guy last week, and he's been earning $3,500 a month for the last 2 to 3 years, he said, which is he's underemployed. I said, well, how much should you be earning technically based on your years of experience and stuff? He's like about $7,000 or $8,000. And so he never thought about it. I'm like, so you're basically losing $3,500 to $4,000 every single month, and you've been doing that for the last 2 to 3 years. And he had, family with kids, and it's like, is that okay with you?
Likely not, right? Yeah,
No,
right. When you put it in that perspective.
It was not okay with him. So anyway, okay, so let's move on to the next question, which is really, what I've found so much so for people, especially, we both work with a lot of executives or people that, might be a little bit more seasoned in their career, is that they haven't had to adapt to the major changes to the process of job searching, which is everything being a lot more online, right? And so there's certain things like, digital marketing, professional, personal branding, understanding keywords for your resume, and how to get past these applicant tracking systems, which is an automated system for those that, aren't familiar with that term. But basically there's a lot of steps and hoops to jump through the process to get to the interview that are a lot more difficult than before. And people don't really have the skills, and they're not adept in doing this because, of course, they haven't had to. So they're not even sure of the right things to do to, make it past LinkedIn's algorithms for, say, to be discovered by a recruiter, or make it past the automated computers. And even if so, they're not really familiar with what professional or personal branding is and how to effectively market themselves online to even get the interviews. So that's what I've seen more and more and more as well, especially with people that are a little bit, again, more modest and feel like they're bragging. So that's why I like to call it bragging appropriately. There's a way to do it. And I wanted, just obviously to hear from your years of experience now and seeing so many of the trends and shifts over the last, 14 or so years, what 2 of the biggest mistakes you see from job seekers with this are, and then maybe what you think are some simple steps they could take to do things differently.
It's a good question. Things are constantly evolving, right? The job search landscape is constantly evolving. So the 2 big mistakes that I see happen are they go hand in hand. They work together. You can't correct one without correcting the other to get results. And the first one is, focusing too heavily on poor return on investment strategies. Mm-hmm. So this might be something like online job postings, right?
Right.
It's not news, right, that online job applications don't yield really good results for job seekers. Most job seekers who especially haven't looked for a job for many years think that the best way to go out and look for the position is just by focusing on online job trolling. And really, it's just most job seekers aren't hired this way. We know that, most jobs are secured through networking and referrals these days. So people have to really leverage their network as part of a modern job search strategy. This has a much higher return on investment. And so I'd say, diversify your approach. Don't put all your eggs in one basket is what I regularly tell my clients. Don't focus on online, right? Think about different ways and different strategies, because like you mentioned before, everyone's a little bit different. So everybody needs their own strategy at the end of the day. And what works for someone over here might not work for someone over there. So knowing what those different avenues are and diversifying yourself when you go out to look for a job is key. Tied closely to that is using generic resumes or LinkedIn profiles as part of a targeted job search. So if you are now conducting a job search, what worked 10 years ago, your general resume isn't going to cut it today, like you mentioned, right? Even if you do still find yourself applying for jobs online, the general resume is not going to get you noticed on a big job board. It's not likely going to parse well through an ATS or an applicant tracking system. Like you said, most companies are using those now to screen and qualify resumes. And even if you give your generic resume to a person, as part of your networking strategy, it's still likely not going to garner the same response that you're hoping for because it's not written for a specific audience, right? Employers, they need to know how you are going to help them. And so, let's say, you're a job seeker and you are applying for a job in a bank, but your resume, all it talks about is, your software writing experience from, an internship you had many years ago or something. There's going to be a disconnect and a disqualification in that process. The bank is looking for someone to talk about customer service and money handling, not necessarily software development. So really, what it comes down to is diversifying your job search approach, right? Trying and applying different strategies until you find one that might work best for you in your industry. And then customizing all of your career tools. That's your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn profile. And you need to do that for every application you apply for. You got to address unique employers' needs for every application in order for them to really take some interest in what you have to say. And I usually tell my clients, listen, at the end of the day, your resume may be all about you, but it isn't meant for you. It's meant for someone else. So we need to write it for them. Yeah.
And that's where that tell me, and trust me, I've gotten stopped up on this because, again, it's not a natural thing. When you're on meeting new people in town and they say, tell me about yourself, or, like that interview question, or they ask it digitally, it's not really meant to tell you my life story for a job. It's meant to explain how my experiences and life experiences and passions tie into what the role is and how I could help. That's what they're really asking. I think, honestly, it's a horribly phrased question. If I was the interviewer, I'd ask it differently. But unfortunately, the reality is that most people do ask it that way. And so stuff like that is really helpful to understand, because it's confusing, because so much of our life, when someone asks us, like, tell me about yourself, you're meeting someone new. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'm a Capricorn and I like, pizza and movies.
But it's not adding any benefit, right? So, you're right. It's very true. I regularly tell my clients that the question that they will most likely stumble or get incorrect during the process is, tell me about yourself. It's not, launch into a complete career chronology. It's really about aligning your value with the employer's requirements and getting those messages across right away out the gate at the start of the interview process.
Could you give me, I love what you just said about the aligning your values with, what was it, of the employer? It sounded so good when you said it, and then I forgot.
Well, so did I. I think it was aligning, your value with the employer's requirements. Really, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Yeah.
Could you give a quick example about how that would sound?
Okay, so, let's say, again, that you're applying for this position at the bank, okay? It's a customer service position. And, the wrong way to go about talking about yourself would be, like you said, to do career chronology or talk about things you like to do in your free time. a better way to approach, tell me about yourself when you're applying to this banking position would be to talk about, in your recent retail role, how you work with customers and how you've built, a certain clientele that are, very devoted to you and your services, and they're repeat clients within, the store, and how you've been, generated different sales or revenue growth from that engagement. I mean, an alignment, right? Showing the bank that, yeah, I can make great connections with people and with customers, and that's important to the bank. And at the same time, those great connections are generating a positive business impact, right? The revenue or the sales growth. At the end of the day, it's almost always about the bottom line. So tying back your value and how you can help improve the bottom line is really valued.
I love that. So the bottom line, and as you said, aligning your values with the employer requirements. So thank you for sharing that example. I wanted listeners to have something tangible, on what that looks like, because it's not, a lot of these things aren't natural to us. Yes. So that's where I, hope that an example could be helpful. Really quick. So I've noticed in some of your posts recently, you've been sharing about a recent, research done by, I think it was JobVite or something like that, where it was 0.4 return of investment with online applications and a 5.2% with employer referrals. I'm wondering how that pans out, because I heard something like a 2%, like 2 out of every 100 receive a response for an online job posting. And then LinkedIn's global report last year said that employer referrals were the number one ways people got jobs, at like maybe it was something like 70 something percent, if I remember correctly. So does that kind of pan out to the 0.4 and 5.2? I'm kind of bad at percentages, so I just
I think it varies, right, Scott? Like, I think different surveys are going to give us different results, but I think what we're seeing is a common theme, right? We're seeing the common theme that the online job applications aren't yielding nearly the same return as referral or, networking opportunities. So, it might not be exactly 5% that the referrals generate, but, I've read statistics that, every job online application gets, 1,000, let's say, applicants, and out of that, let's say 4 people are chosen for an interview. And then out of that, only 1 person gets the job at the end of the day. So 1 in what? Is not a very good percentage, right?
Yeah.
So I think it depends. It depends on the role. It depends on the company.
Absolutely.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's still about, those connections and working around the system.
Yeah, and I'm just happen to be horrible with percentages, so I was like, what's 0.4? I guess the main takeaway is that 5.2 is a lot more than 0.4.
You got it. Yeah, that's all that we need to say, right? It's a lot more.
Yeah, and 70% is a lot more than 2. So absolutely. I think that's the main takeaway. Both seem like, yeah, that would probably be the bottom line there. Okay, I was just curious about that. So the last question was kind of touching on something, I mentioned earlier, was that I've honestly found that my clients that I would, if I was running a company, well, I am, but like if I needed them, they'd be the kind of people I'd want to work for me. They're just really honest. They're hardworking. I've had clients that over months, I found that like, they're so amazing at their job, but like it took sometimes, weeks or a month to pull out just how impressive they've been throughout their career, like those career highlights, because they're just so not in that pattern of like appropriate bragging, as I like to call it, or how to think in quantitative terms and how that applies to jobs. It's like so unnatural, especially for the people that have been at a company for 20, 30 years. They've never had to do this before with almost anything else, right? They probably got the job out of school pretty easily. And so everything was a lot different. And the unfortunate part is, even though I believe in my heart of hearts and know that these people are amazing at what they do and have contributed so much to their company that, usually no longer appreciates them at all, is that they're losing out on great opportunities, right? Because other people don't know that how great they are, and they don't have the time to dedicate to, you know, like you and I do when we work with people more long term, just how amazing they are. So, you know, have you observed something similar, like this kind of, you know, what I found is like it seems like the good people lose out on the opportunities, and the people that might be a little bit, I don't want to use like any phrases, but not as great employees, let's put it that way, that I wouldn't hire, sometimes seem to be a little better at that naturally for whatever reason. And that's just been my observations over the years. Have you had similar? And if so, you know, what specific advice would you have for these types of people to help them excel and actually get the quality opportunities that they're so deserving of?
Yeah, you're right. I definitely see this pattern. You know, over the years, I've worked with a lot of really amazing professionals, right? Highly accomplished executives. They've led billion-dollar organizations. They've overseen thousands of staff. They've propelled impressive revenue growth. But then when we sit down together and I ask them to kind of share these details or specifics, they do, you know, something like you said. They struggle with it. They get what I call quietly contemplative. You know, they're either humble or they're uncertain, right? They're uncertain about what specifically they need to tell me or
Yes.
why,
Yes.
right? Or they're just humble. They feel like, you know, it's not important. That's not of value. So there's some education involved in that. And, you know, it just comes down to explaining a couple of things. Again, like you said, that the job search landscaping is changing, what employers are specifically looking for. I always say, you know, you can't just tell an employer, for example, I'm an excellent communicator. It just doesn't have a lot of strength to that statement, right? And it could be true, though. You could be a truly excellent communicator. So it's, to me, I always say, well, how can you measure that? Give me a measurement of something specific that you've done that clearly demonstrates, you know, excellent communication skills. So I think it just comes down to sometimes rephrasing it or rewording it, or giving perspective around why that's important. And usually I say, you know, success at, like you said, appropriately bragging really comes down to three things. You need to know yourself, you need to know your audience, and you need to know what matters, right? So to know yourself means you need to take the time to really dig deep and unearth what your personal value is, okay? So you might have to partner with it to support this, and that's fine, right? It's worth the investment, like we've already talked about. It can have great returns if you work with someone that can really help guide you through that process. And then you need to work to support your claims with quantifiable and measurable achievements from throughout your career, all right? You need to provide what I call the proof, right? So you can't just, again, say you're an excellent communicator. You need to give some proof around that. And this will help build confidence and understanding of value. And that will come across in a lot of different ways through the job search process. So it's really an invaluable step. You know, when it comes to knowing your audience, this is important. You need to know what the employers that you're targeting are looking for, okay? Again, you can't just be general. You can't be just, I'm an excellent communicator, or I'm a good people person, or I'm good at sales. It has to be more specific around the needs of each individual employer.
Yes.
You know, and I think at the end of the day, you need to know what language the employer is speaking. You need to know what keywords or key phrases will really spark their interest. And that's because, you know, people gravitate more towards people that they feel connected to. And speaking the same language gets you on common ground, and people become more attuned to what you're saying, what you're selling, right? And I usually say, at the end of the day, you're not bragging, you're selling, all right? In the job search, selling is an important part of that process. And I usually tell clients this, you know, the people who secure the job offers at the end of the day aren't always the most qualified candidates. The job offers are typically awarded to the better communicators and the better sales people, right? So those people that really understood their value and did a better job of selling it are the ones that are likely to secure a role. So it's really important to understand both yourself and your audience in the process. And then the last thing is, you know what matters, right? And that's to qualify yourself for different opportunities, you need to cut out anything that's unrelated, right? You don't want to, like I said, water down your value message. And that's, for example, going into an interview, like I said, maybe you're applying again back at that bank, and you go in and start talking about your software development experience, which is completely unrelated to the role. So in that moment, you really need to focus on what matters and learn to just remove some of the rest. You know, executives with 30-year careers, they have a lot of skills and they have a lot of different things they can speak on, but not everything matters.
Necessary.
Yeah.
Less is more.
Yes.
That is great, Adrienne. And I found, so I've actually done sales roles and I've excelled. And what I've found is selling myself is a whole different ballgame that I, for lack of a better word, suck at. And it's taken so long to get like okay at it. But what I found, like I'll give you an example, is I just was working with a client, finished up a couple months ago. Adrienne, I didn't even know until the fourth or fifth call, and this was after we had conversations before working together as well, that he was the executive, the CMO at a $42 billion company. $42 billion company. And I didn't even know that until the fourth or fifth call of like an hour-long call. And so it's just like, if after that much time with this person and doing assessments, I still didn't know that until that long, imagine how hard it's going to be for this person to sell himself. And it was kind of a two-step thing, which is one, I feel like I kind of experienced it as well, is they're an all-star in their own field and everybody knows them for like, 20, 30 years because they had like 30 locations around the world at this organization. He's like, the man. Yeah. He has to prove himself on places like LinkedIn because no one knows who the heck he is. You know what I mean? Recruiters aren't going to know who this person is. And even if maybe 1 out of 50 does, it doesn't matter. He still has to prove himself, but he hasn't had to for, his whole life. And even when it comes down to it, I think, my point is that a lot of people that even maybe good salespeople still struggle at selling themselves appropriately. And that, I guess if you have something else to add, I really think, I'm convinced that you need to work with somebody else on it. I don't see any other way that's going to be effective. Unless
that's a good point. No, yeah. I 100% agree with you because, again, like we said, at the end of the day, we are all masters of something, right? But we're not masters of everything. And,
right.
Job search and interview and selling yourself, again, are not skills that we're regularly applying on a regular basis. And if you're not, then you're not a master at that. So you do need, outside support and guidance to work through that process and to help you, really shine at it for sure.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to add that on is that's been my experience, especially, and I've found a lot of people that aren't naturally, like you said, they might not be the job often goes to the person that might not be the best for the job because the person that's best for the job has no idea of what's really important and how to appropriately sell themselves. Even if they're good at selling other things. That's what my experience has been too.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Well, that's great, Adrienne. And if anyone's listening, Adrienne knows what she's talking about. I highly recommend you follow her on LinkedIn. If I know she's always she's having people reach out to her all the time about her services. Adrienne, if someone wanted to come to you and work with you and get help on, their executive resume and other things that you do with their business, what would be a good way that they could get a hold of you?
So the best way, I'm open to connections on LinkedIn for sure. I'm pretty easy to find there. So it's just Adrienne Tom. But for information on, the different services I offer job seekers at all different levels can be found on my website. So that's www.careerimpressions.ca.
So www.careerimpressions.ca as in Carl Apple.
You got it.
Okay, and then Adrienne Tom, it's A-D, as you can see on the screen, RIENNETOM in
Yep.
Canada. And so you should be, I'm sure. Is there any other Adrienne Toms on LinkedIn?
I haven't actually checked, so maybe it's something I should check into. But I think that, I shouldn't be too difficult to find. I'm probably the only Adrienne Tom that's working within this specific industry.
With the industry, and if people get stopped up, you could always search for her. She's in Canada, so she's the one. And it says 21-time award-winning executive resume writer, something along those lines. I think you'll pick it up pretty easily. Thank you so much, Adrienne. I appreciate your time. I know we went a little bit over. Was there anything else you wanted to to add for people listening that you feel like could be helpful or that you didn't get a chance to mention?
I think we covered up some good content today, Scott. You had some excellent questions, and I'm sure that there's a lot of good takeaways within this podcast together. So I really do hope that some people find some value in the different tips that we had to share together, and I really appreciate you reaching out to invite me here today.
Yeah, it was so great to have you on here and just do this interview. And if you are listening and you want to hear more interviews like this I do with people or podcasts, please subscribe to me on YouTube, and you'll see the subscribe button on the top right. And if you are listening and you're like, wow, this was such good information, and you know that it helped you, I'd highly recommend, share it with other people, because so many people are desperately needing this information, and it's important. They're supporting themselves and their families by getting better jobs and having a better quality of life. So I'd really encourage you to, if you found this really helpful for you, just know that it would be helpful to other people that might really need it. So I'd highly recommend sharing it with your network, and if you found value in it. So thanks again for people listening, and thank you so much, Adrienne, and we'll take it from there.
All right, thanks, Scott.
All right, bye.